Curious about lip filler? Whether you want a subtle pout or bold plump, Juvederm lip fillers can give you a customized lip look. Juvederm Volbella XC and Juvederm Ultra XC can last up to a full year with optimal treatment, giving your lips added volume for smooth, natural-looking, and long-lasting results. Whether you're concerned about your thin lips or simply want fuller lips, ask about Juvederm lip fillers at your next appointment with your licensed specialist. And download the Ally app, that's ALLE, the official loyalty program of Juvederm, to save on treatments. For important safety information and to find a licensed specialist, visit Juvederm.com. That's JUVEDERM.com. Not for people with severe allergic reactions, allergies to lidocaine, or the proteins used in Juvederm. Common side effects include injection site redness, swelling, pain, tenderness, firmness, lumps, bumps, bruising, discoloration, or itching. There's a risk of unintentional injection into a blood vessel, which can cause vision abnormalities, blindness, stroke, temporary scabs, or scarring. Talk to a licensed specialist to find out if it's right for you.
Summer's here, and you can now get almost anything you need for your sunny days delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a well-groomed lawn delivered, but you can get a chicken parmesan delivered. A cabana? That's a no. But a banana? That's a yes. A nice tan? Sorry, nope. But a box fan? Happily, yes. A day of sunshine? No. A box of fine wines? Yes. Uber Eats can definitely get you that. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
Welcome back to YA OK. It's Alyssa and
Eric. Hi.
I feel like we're like Mary-Kate and Ashley when we do it like that. We have Lance Rubin on today, and we talked about a whole bunch of books. Funny enough, we didn't really talk about the one that he has.
Yeah,
that
most
is
recent. Crying Laughing.
Yeah, Crying Laughing, which we got so in our conversation immediately, and we talked about so many great things. And then at the very end,
we talked for a while too. So this is a longer episode. Matt, break this up into two. Make it a two-parter. I'm just kidding. No,
we yapped, and it was great, and it was so great. And actually, before we go into his episode, I had a really exciting moment this past weekend. I went to Sleepy Hollow, which is actually very close to where I live. And I was walking around and I went into a bookstore and I saw Eric J. Brown. Well, I didn't see Eric, but I saw All That's Left in the World on the bookshelf in the store.
Right next to Charlotte Bront.
That cracked me up. I posted an Instagram story and Eric shared it and said, next to my arch nemesis, Charlotte.
Charlotte. Damn it, Charlotte.
Damn it. And fully just Jane Eyre and you're like my arch nemesis. But it was so exciting.
Put me up with a classic. How fun.
And then, so I posted that on my Instagram story, and one of my best friends responded to that story and was like, I just read that book recently, like a couple of months ago. He finished the book.
Jane Eyre.
And he loved it. All That's Left in the World.
She steals another sale from me.
Damn it. But yeah, and that was really exciting. I was like, oh my God, this is like, it felt very, it felt like I was experiencing my famous friend for a moment in time. It was really exciting. That's what it felt like. To have like a friend just respond to me and be like, oh, I just finished that book. I loved it. I was like,
I love that.
It's so crazy.
Friend, if you're listening, thank you.
Yeah, it was very cool. I don't think he listens to my podcast, but he read your book.
Wow.
Our
podcast. I guess we know who the favorite is.
Yeah, obviously you.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously you. But yeah, that was just a very cool moment, and I wanted to share that.
Thank you. I love it. I love seeing my book out in the wild, especially like a small store. Because I'll go into small stores all the time and just kind of walk in and be like, beep, beep, beep. Nope. All right. Gotta leave. Don't want to be looking. Do you need help, sir? No, I don't. Please don't ask me.
It was a really small store. So it was cool that like I always, whenever I see YA sections and I'm anywhere near the B, I'm always like, I'm just going to check and see. Yeah. And it's really exciting that I actually got to see your book in the wild. I
love it. And then some people send me like pictures from overseas if they're on vacation. They'll be like, oh, we're in a bookstore. I was like, why were you in a Spanish bookstore? You don't speak Spanish.
That is so
I think it's
funny.
just a look for me, which is
that's really sweet.
I love it.
Everyone's so proud of you.
If any of our listeners are seeing this, tag me if you see my book in the wild. That's what I meant to say. Not if you're seeing this, because we're on a podcast. You know what? We should probably start the episode.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, here's Lance.
You are my universe. You are my universe, and I'm just a planet.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you too.
Yeah.
And we actually have a mutual friend, Catherine Locke. I'm on.
Katie.
They're doing a middle grade anthology next year that I'm on.
That's amazing. I was in one of Catherine's other anthologies. It's a whole spiel. Yeah, amazing.
And I also want to talk about first year orientation too, because I know Eric Smith as well. He's in Philly.
Another great Eric.
Another great Eric.
He's somebody that we're going to have on the podcast at some point too. But
amazing. Yeah, of course. He's a no-brainer.
Well, Lance, thanks for coming today. I'm really excited to talk to you.
I'm so excited to talk with you. Thank you for having me. I've listened to your podcast and it's great. And I'm happy to be here speaking on it.
Yay.
I think we are one of the top 5 best YA-based podcasts on the Eastern Seaboard.
Easily.
On the Eastern Seaboard. At first, I was like, how many YA podcasts are there, first of all? Like, where are we ranking?
I really think there's probably like 3.
Okay.
I think there could be more than that. So I got invited to another one, too.
You did?
There's at least 11 or 12.
Yes.
Okay, 11 or 12. I'll take it. But then you really limited us with the Eastern Seaboard situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I appreciate the humbleness that you have for our podcast.
I'm very humble. I'm a very humble, internationally best-selling author.
How many years running is this podcast now?
Not even one.
Not even one.
Okay, brand new. Okay, I
6
knew
months.
it was newish. Okay,
6
Yeah.
months.
Amazing.
Half a year.
Oh my God, 6 months.
Let's just say today is our half-year anniversary.
Let's do it. I'm so happy to be here to celebrate.
That's why we have special guests.
Yes.
That's why we have Lance Rubin on today.
Yes. I baked cupcakes. We're not together in the same room, but I'll eat some.
But I appreciate the spirit of you doing that. I love that.
Yeah.
And you're located in Brooklyn, right?
I am, correct, Alyssa.
Oh my
Yes.
goodness. I'm in Westchester County, so I'm waving at you.
Amazing. Hello. Yeah. Not too far
I'm still
at all.
in Philadelphia.
We're all
But I'll be in New York October 1st. So doing an event at Books of Wonder with Elliot Schriever. So.
You're doing the event with Elliot Schriever? That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I might be going to that event.
Wait, I want to come.
Oh my God. So I'll meet you in person?
Yes.
You should come, Alyssa.
I am going to come October 1st. I'm going to write it
Let's
down.
all meet up.
What a tiny small world, because I only recently met Elliot personally. I've known of him and known of his books, but I've connected with him. And so I had seen that this event was happening. I was like, oh, I got to go meet Elliot in person. And I didn't even see that it's you moderating. This is a tiny world.
This just happened too. I think we decided like last week, Books of Wonder reached out to me.
That's amazing.
And I was like, yeah, I love his books.
Oh,
and like our books, The Darkness Outside Us and All That's Left in the World came out the same year, and they have so many like parallels.
Oh,
and
that's
like
amazing.
all of we have so much like crossover readership too. I think it's going to be a great event. I'm excited.
That's beautiful.
We actually got on Zoom yesterday to have a drink and just talk, because we had never really met in person. So we're like, oh, we'll just talk on Zoom for a little bit. It was like the pandemic. I had a mild flashback, but thankfully there were drinks.
I know.
A virtual hang.
Zoom drinks. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to go back there, but yeah, Zoom drinks. Amazing.
I love that. Okay, so Lance, I want to know, because I was looking at the books that you've written so far, and there's some that you co-write, and there's some that you write on your own, which is so interesting.
Isn't it?
What is the experience like of co-writing books?
So I've really loved it because before I was writing, I was mainly an actor. And so I'm like so used to the collaborative, let's get together and make a thing that, I so love writing my books on my own. But as you know, it's a more solitary experience. You're working with your editor at some point, but there's long stretches where it's just you and your thoughts and your doubts and your insecurities and whatever. Talking to yourself.
Right.
Like, is this good? I think it's good. This is the best thing that's ever happened. No, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. Like, just that's all within 1 minute. So yeah, I feel really lucky that I kind of fell into a situation where I ended up writing that book with Rhett and Link. That was the first thing I co-wrote. That book came out in 2019 called The Lost Causes of Bleak Creek. Rhett and Link are this amazing YouTube duo who have this show, Good Mythical Morning. And I basically got put in the running to like write it with them because one of my older brother Dustin's best friends, Darren Belitsky, was working with them. And he was like, oh, you guys are looking to write a book with someone? Like this guy wrote some YA books and you might have a shared sensibility. And so we did. And I wrote with them. And yeah, it's different, obviously, because, you know, they're obviously steering the ship and I'm like, you know, trying to bring their vision to life.
They're massive, by the way. Good Mythical Morning, for those listener-wise who don't know, I just double-checked, 18.8 million followers on YouTube.
Huge. Yeah, there's like YouTube pioneers. They're like some of the first, you know, YouTube stars, and they've amazing. They're very impressive because they've maintained, you know, relevance and keep coming up with new creative ideas. And that's what working with them was like. They were very inspiring because they were, you know, never getting too attached to one idea. Oh, that didn't work. Let's do something else. So this is a very long answer to your question, but I really love it because it's like a different kind of thinking and writing. And it's not all me and my brain driving everything. I really get to be like, okay, how can I help them, you know, achieve what they're wanting to and you know, different ideas coming from all directions. And we were actually like in Google Docs together and they would make changes. It was just cool. It's like,
oh, okay. That is cool.
Yeah.
I was wondering like logistically how you do that. Is it just like really long meetings where you're writing together?
It's a lot of like really long meetings, and then, you know, they're making this show, so I would kind of get things started, and then we'd all jump in the dock and be like, change it. So it would be like long online meetings. This was pre-pandemic too, but we were, you know, they're West Coast based and I'm East Coast, so we would have these long meetings, just like, you know, I'm just recording these sessions of us talking about all these ideas, and then try to put the ideas in the thing, and then they jump in the Google Doc and be like, no, that's kind of not the thing. And they're rewriting it. So it was cool. And then more recently, I just helped on a first book and then officially co-wrote a book with Darren Aronofsky, the filmmaker, and his screenwriting producing partner, Ari Handel, called Monster Club. Those are middle grade. But that was really fun. And that was like a screenplay they'd written that had this 12-year-old. That was a very kind of magical adventure. Would have been a magical adventure movie, didn't get made. And then they were like, maybe we should try and write a book. And then I ended up, you know, helping them with the first and being the official co-writer in the second. And that was like a different kind of collaboration, but that's the fun too, of like figuring out, okay, you know, when I come into like a job like that with an existing project that they want to bring a co-writer on, it's like, again, they're steering the ship, and it's like, I'm just kind of looking at them like, how do they want to do this? And how, you know, offering my ideas on how we can work, but I'm kind of looking at them like, how do you want to work? Like how much, what?
All of the like group projects we've ever done in school prepared you for this moment.
Yes, really did. And
who was the one who didn't do any work?
Exactly. Oh, geez. But I just love, you know, I love the bouncing back and forth between that, because like, then when I come off one of those and I don't have to bow to anyone else's ideas, it's kind of nice. I'm like, back in my own book where I can do everything. Yeah. And then you hit the point with your own book, you're like, I have to do everything. You know, so I love that. Right now I don't have any. I've some like, I'm thinking of possible collaborations, but I don't have any of those going on right now. I'm just working on my own stuff, which is great. But I do love the collaborations.
Yeah, was there like a screenplay that Darren and Ari had written beforehand that you kind of based it off of?
Yeah, the first book had a screenplay that it was based on, so that one there was much more of a roadmap. And then when it came to the second one, that's why it was like less of just like I'm helping and more like, oh, you're co-writing, because we were coming up with a story from scratch. There was they hadn't planned for, you know, what a sequel would look like. So yeah, that was harder in some ways and more fun in other ways, because I really had more liberty to be like, hey, what about this? And what about this? As opposed to
with Good Mythical Morning, you kind of had that in because you knew somebody. How did you get involved with Darren Aronofsky and Ari?
With Darren
was
Aronofsky,
that through your like agent?
Exactly. Very boring. Yeah. But now once I had done the Bleak Creek and like was like, oh, he does this, then I could be thrown in the have my hat thrown in the ring to do that job. And that was wild timing because that I first Zoomed with them April 2020. So like lockdown had just happened. I have 2 kids who are now 7 and 10, but were at the time like 6 and 2, and it was insane, and then it was like, oh, Darren Aronofsky and his writing partner Ari like want to potentially meet with you. So I'm like going to the back bedroom to like Zoom, it's still like just a month into lockdown. And then I'm like, oh, there's Darren Aronofsky. Like this is very surreal.
I can't believe like I'm looking at all of the movies that the 2 of them have been a part of or created. And I'm like, I know vaguely.
Middle grade.
No,
right.
No.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Ari Handel, I don't know what exactly he did for Mother, the movie with,
oh, well, yeah.
Oh my God.
What's her name?
But Mother, that's Darren Aronofsky's movie. He wrote that.
Oh, okay. He did.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I have so many questions for them.
Yes, of course you do.
And how did they get from sacrificing and eating a baby in that movie to middle grade?
I know.
I have a feeling that you were the connecting link there.
I believe I was, Alyssa. I believe I was.
You were a significant bridge for that gap.
Yes. No, and that was what was so fun about it, and why I was having the same feeling when I got the emails. Like Darren Aronofsky's doing
really?
what? For middle grade? But like the interesting part was like so much of their creative sensibility from other movies, like Monster Club is very much set in Coney Island, which is where Darren Aronofsky grew up. And so like, and is like very big part of Requiem for a Dream, which is a very dark movie, the kind of movie people are like, I can't watch that ever again because that was enough. It's already in my nightmares forever. Yeah. But it's like set in Coney Island. So there's these weird parallels where you see like, oh, this is the same creative mind, just like steering the sensibility younger, which I thought was such a cool thing. And I feel bummed because those books, I think when they came out, the second one just came out earlier this year, but they've gone very under the radar. I feel like it was one of those things where it was like such a cool publicity possibilities that didn't happen for whatever reason, as the way so many of these books come out and don't get the attention you want them to. But yeah, I just think that the fun of that, like this guy made Black Swan and Monster Club.
It's so wild and so much fun.
Yeah, I'm proud of those books though. They are fun. Anyone listening, if you enjoy middle grade, I think you'll like them. They're fun adventures, fun characters. Very New York City.
It's funny because earlier this week even, there was this big thing on Threads from middle grade authors, and they're all struggling. It's just the age category. Barnes & Noble is not carrying hardcover copies of middle grade.
It's bad.
When they don't sell in hardcover, sometimes they don't get a paperback. And then if they do get a paperback, Barnes & Noble won't buy it because they're like, oh, well, the hardcover didn't sell. And it's like, it didn't sell because you didn't buy it. Like,
yes.
And there's even Barnes & Noble booksellers who went on Threads and were replying to authors saying that they're blacklisted from buying books. They're like, no, you are not allowed to buy these middle grade books because they're too expensive. Nobody's buying them. And we just end up returning them all. Which that's the number one thing that pisses me off. It's like, you're a huge book retailer. You're the biggest book retailer in America.
Yeah.
You can return all of these books. Just buy them, put 3 copies up. That's what they do with my books. There's usually 3 copies on the thing. If they're not there, people will go elsewhere or they'll ask somebody for them.
Right.
But just buy them. And if they don't sell, just return them. And I don't understand why they're not giving anybody any chance at all. And I feel bad for middle grade authors because they're all just struggling. And there's a lot of YA authors who pivoted to middle grade because they're like, oh, it's kind of like you're building your own base where you're younger. And then as they get older, they find your YA stuff. And then you can kind of go back and forth. And
I know. Well, and I'm proud to say on the heels of this Bleak Threads topic that I am one of those authors who now is doing YA and middle grade. My middle grade solo debut comes out in August 2025, and I'm excited about it. But this is not news to me. I've been hearing about what a dark time it is in middle grade, and people are hoping things turn around. And this is the creative plight in general, right? Where art meets commerce. Yeah. It's like the trends are always switching, and you're trying to make money doing it, but like this, you have no control over certain elements, and it's a terrible, wonderful ride.
And I feel like part of it also is that so much of book marketing now is relying on TikTok, and middle grade I think is too young for like kids to like for things to go viral on TikTok, because with YA there's crossover. Adults can read YA, and like there's obviously going to be some adults who are like, oh, I would never read YA. Why would you read that trash? And then there's other adults who are like, oh, actually, these are genuinely good books.
Of course. Yeah.
And there's less of that with middle grade. I think you need even like that portion of the population that's willing to read below their age category. Because like, I mean, Harry Potter even didn't skyrocket to superstardom until parents were seeing how many of their kids were actually reading it. And then they were like, oh, well, I guess I should see what my kids are reading.
Right.
And I don't think that there has been something that starts as middle grade and became that big since, which I was in like, what, 90s? So,
yes, I have this theory that I hope is wrong, but about middle grade. And of course, there's like a billion factors contributing to a middle grade slump. But coming out of the pandemic, so in the pandemic, middle grade was like up, and parents were like buying their kids books, and whatever, kids were homeschooled, and it was horrible, and needed to buy things. But also, kids had screens in their hands because they had to. They were doing school on screens, and I wonder if just like they're more screen based than, and not even e-readers, but like screen based, and like books are kind of just like, we've got this generation of pandemic kids who might be more ready to watch YouTube shorts than books. And of course, that's a broad generalization. And I hope I'm kind of wrong, because books are always going to be important. But it's wild to me that we've shifted, and my kids are readers, and they enjoy books, which is great. And I think part of that's just who they are, and part of it is they have two writer parents, giving them books all the time. But I just worry that like now, this long form content is like harder for kids to even take, the brains are being shifted. And so, whereas it used to be like books are obviously important, now I feel like they're more important than ever. It's like, keep those brain muscles that can follow a long form story going, because that's proven to like build empathy. And it can even be in movies and TV shows, like that works those same muscles. But like, again, now even I think watching movies is like important for kids, because like a lot of kids are just like, I only want to watch YouTube shorts,
TV
TikToks,
shows,
like, and of course there can be great quality in YouTube and TikTok. I'm not saying there isn't, but the form inherently is just like the brain takes it in differently, and then you lose the ability to kind of like follow a thread for 45 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour, and that's terrifying to me.
Yeah. Well, I think there's been an interesting thing where with people who are kind of like in their mid 20s or to like mid 30s, I've like my kind of age group, where the pendulum has really swung the other way, where I feel like I know personally, and I see it even just on socials all the time, people are reading more than like having series like A Court of Thorns and Roses be like a pop culture thing. Gave me like, and I read the whole thing, and it was like fine. But I was so happy that there was a series of books those books are thick, and people were sitting and reading every single one. They were devouring them. And so I'm praying that will just start to trickle down a little bit, and maybe the pendulum will swing the other way, because I think after a certain time, like that type of content, it like that quick paced, like 15-second reel or whatever is like, I think people get fatigued after a while from that. But but in terms of middle grade, it's like they're just at the beginning of all of it. So I don't know.
Right. Well, I hope you're right. That's heartening. And I think these things are always swinging and backlash to the backlash, of trends. Yeah. So everything's always changing. But
for sure. Millennials are all like into the amount of millennials that I know that have started their young adulthood in like major cities, partying and being hot on Instagram, and now they're all homesteaders and have goats. And I'm like, wow, how did we get there?
They don't watch TV anymore. They just read huge books that are like 600 pages.
Exactly. So I don't know. I also hope that you're wrong, and that somehow middle grade will find a second, kind of wind.
Yeah. I think so. I hope so too. And I think we're just in the midst of this moment when government's starting to realize like tech, problem. Like you just saw these new Instagram. Yeah. Instagram just changed their policies about teens and Instagram. This was just news yesterday about just like parents being able to regulate it more. And so I think it's going to be like bumpy to figure out how that all works. But I think it's ultimately going to be good. And we're going to look back even 10 years from now on social media the way we look at cigarettes now. Like how is everybody just smoking these all the time? It's
right.
Like, how are kids just like going on social media with just like no guardrails? So I think as that happens, I don't know, I feel hopeful longer form entertainment will rise up.
I hope so.
And fill in the vacuum.
I feel like it's also, it's like kids just have to discover what it feels like, I think, to finish reading a book, because there is a sense of accomplishment, especially if it's a longer book. Like when I finish reading a long book, I'm like, I'm proud of myself. This was 400 pages long. And it's just, and then I immediately, I'm like, oh, I need to read something else now. So it's like, it's like you're kind of chasing that same, it's a different kind of endorphin, but like you're just like kind of excited about the way, especially if like it's a book that you kind of lose yourself in, where you're just devouring it, where like 100 pages go by and you're like, oh my God, I've been reading for this long in one sitting. I think it just takes some time for kids to find that. They have to like connect with the kind of the story. So
absolutely. And I see it in my own kids, like graphic novels are often like a great entryway, and that's fantastic. Because like you're saying, it's just, it can be so daunting, this idea of a book, especially as like attention spans are shorter, that they just need to see they can do it. And then you kind of expand. So to that end, I'm just remembering I've had conversations with editors in middle grade in the past year saying like, we're trying to make the books shorter just to give kids the feeling like that they can read it, just so it's less like they see that 300-page middle grade book, which used to be the norm even 5 years ago. And they're like, I'm not touching that. But if you see like a 200-page book, you're like, okay. And then you can build that sense of achievement.
Right. And I think even for adults, because I mean, I assume mostly adults listen to this podcast, but I think even for adults, that's kind of the value in YA. I think for people who are getting into reading again and are not really sure. I always say for people who, because I have a lot of conversations now with friends who are like, oh, you read so much. And I feel like I can't, anytime I try and read, I can't do it. And I always am saying to them, well, what are you trying to read? Like, are you sitting down and reading for the first time and trying to read like Pride and Prejudice? Because I don't recommend that. Don't do that. Read something indulgent. Read something easy and breezy that's fun that you're going to want to rip through. Like maybe that's a thriller for you, or maybe that's a YA. Like maybe it's middle grade. Who cares? The purpose is you're spending time using your brain and your imagination, and you're allowing that's the best feeling about reading these books. And when you're reading books that are like middle grade or YA as an adult, I feel like the imagery is just so different because it's meant for younger people, and it's so much fun. Like it's just fun, and you can so easily just create those images in your brain, and it's just great.
I completely agree. And I think guilty pleasure in reading shouldn't even be a thing anymore, because there's no guilt in reading. Any reading you're doing
is great.
You're helping your brain like pay attention to something that's not just like flipping to a new tab, watching a new YouTube short, whatever. So it's like it's all good. And I completely agree. Go with what just like feels fun and easy and good, and just
you feel like you earned it at the end. It's like, especially when there's a book and then there's like there's like a movie of the book. I'm like, here's the thing. You could sit down and you can watch this movie in 2 hours, but will you feel the same about that story and those characters as you would have if you spent 14 hours learning exactly that same story? And some people might hear that and be like, that seems silly. And I'm telling you it's not, because it's so worth it. Like I just read Rebecca.
Ooh, nice.
And I've never read or watched or anything of it, and so I wasn't really know what I was getting into. But like the actual book is like it's long. She's thick, and it took me a while. It took me a while to get through, but it was so satisfying to finish. And when I got to the end of it, I was like, wow, I know this story now. This is like a really famous book, and I know this story now. And it's just, the satisfaction is just so there in a way that it wouldn't have been if I just like watched. I think there's like a series on Netflix, and I might still watch it because I love it.
There's a movie by Alfred Hitchcock.
Really? Of Rebecca?
Very famous.
Yes.
What
That's
rock?
the one you should watch.
What rock am I under?
I believe
That's
it's an
not the
Academy
one.
Award-winning film. Yeah,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken. But I haven't seen it, and I haven't read it. So you're still
Matt,
you haven't one up.
Matt,
on me.
delete
it's
that
not
from the
his best
podcast.
movie, but
Matt,
no,
delete,
keep it
delete
in.
that from the podcast.
Keep it in.
No, kidding.
Keep it in.
Wait, is it Armie Hammer in the
Yeah, Armie
remake
Hammer's
version too? So
yes.
go watch that one.
I don't want to watch
Because
it.
I don't think there's any cannibalism in Rebecca. I'm forgetting.
No.
I never even read the book. I only saw the Hitchcock movie once. But
That's crazy that I didn't know that. I also am like not super into Hitchcock. Is one of those things where I'm like, because it is older, when I watch them, I'm kind of like, I'm a little disengaged and I want to be able to appreciate it. I should be able to appreciate it more, but I'll watch Rebecca.
Watch North by Northwest. It feels,
Okay.
I just watched it recently. It feels very alive, crackling. It's not going to make you feel disengaged. It's really so fun.
Okay.
I would say
will.
watch Vertigo because that is his best movie. And Alyssa, I think you would love it.
Really?
'Cause it is. So Hitchcock, first of all, Hitchcock's a serial abuser. He was a total asshole. He abused many of the women on his set.
Yeah,
he treated
terrible.
Tippi Hedren so horribly that she stopped acting because of him.
Oh God, I didn't
And
know
they
that.
made that an HBO show, HBO movie called The Girl. That was really good. Watch that one.
Wow.
And then there's also another movie called Hitchcock about him filming Psycho and how awful he was to Janet Leigh, who is Jamie Lee Curtis's mom. But anyway, like Vertigo's like one of my favorite movies because I think it's one of those things where I think some art is all subconscious. It's the person doing it doesn't realize they're doing it because the entire movie is about toxic masculinity. And I do not think Alfred Hitchcock realizes that.
Wow. I haven't seen that since high school. I need to rewatch that one.
It's about this guy, this cop, who he's like chasing this guy on the rooftops of San Francisco. And while he's chasing them, he like almost falls off the roof and he has this severe fear of heights. And now he has PTSD. He can't be a cop anymore. And he ends up investigating for an old college friend. And he is basically hired to follow this college friend's wife around because she's been acting strange. And he just becomes obsessed with her. And I don't want to tell you anything else because it's like there's baby ghosts and then all of a sudden there's a twist like halfway through that like makes you go, it changes the entire movie. And then it like kind of goes from a different point of view. And the ending is so good. And again, it's all about toxic masculinity. And I really do not think Hitchcock had the self-awareness to realize that.
Interesting.
I love that.
Curious about lip filler? Whether you want a subtle pout or bold plump, Juvederm lip fillers can give you a customized lip look. Juvederm Volbella XC and Juvederm Ultra XC can last up to a full year with optimal treatment, giving your lips added volume for smooth, natural-looking and long-lasting results. Whether you're concerned about your thin lips or simply want fuller lips, ask about Juvederm lip fillers at your next appointment with your licensed specialist. And download the Ally app, that's ALLE, the official loyalty program of Juvederm, to save on treatments. For important safety information and to find a licensed specialist, visit Juvederm.com. That's JUVEDERM.com. Not for people with severe allergic reactions, allergies to lidocaine, or the proteins used in Juvederm. Common side effects include injection site redness, swelling, pain, tenderness, firmness, lumps, bumps, bruising, discoloration, or itching. There's a risk of unintentional injection into a blood vessel, which can cause vision abnormalities, blindness, stroke, temporary scabs, or scarring. Talk to a licensed specialist to find out if it's right for you.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Hello everyone, we're Superhero Stuff You Should Know, and if you think you know about superheroes and comic books, think again.
We got romance. We got action.
Romance?
We got comedy.
We got everything you need, man. Come on down to Superhero Stuff You Should Know for all your superhero needs.
I don't know about this romance. What part are you talking about?
We've got all kinds of sketches, and then deep dives on top of that. Come on down to Superhero Stuff You Should Know.
All right, so come on down to... Wait, why did I say come on down? To Superhero Stuff You Should Know.
Anyways, but I want to get back to you and your books and your projects and things.
Sure.
So one of the things that we talk about all the time is how Eric has a very chaotic mapping style for his books, like how he prepares to write his books. And so we always have to know. Well, that's exactly. I always have to know how our guests prepare to write their books. Are you an outliner? Do you plot out? How do we do this?
Great question. It has changed from book to book. It's evolved, you know. My first book, Denton Little's Death Date, when I was writing that one, let me just talk about the conditions under which I was writing that, which was like I had been pursuing acting and also like writing sketch comedy shows and, working all these different jobs like cater waitering and playing music for little kids and all these things. And my acting career hit this point where my agent and manager like dropped me within a couple months and like nothing was working. And then I read The Hunger Games and was like, oh, this is cool. This is what YA is now. My book is nothing like The Hunger Games, but I had this idea for a world where everybody knew the day they were going to die. Not unlike they both die at the end, the far more successful version of my book, at least commercially. But I'd had that idea, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'll try and write this as YA. So in that book was just me like, I had some kind of ideas of what would happen, but I was really seat of the pants, like just writing every day and like figuring it out. And also figuring out like, how do I write something this long? Like I'd always written in my life, but never attempted a novel.
Right.
And so that one was like, write a first draft. And then, after I had the first draft, I was kind of like, I think it's pretty good, like, this is the first time you do it. And I think this seems to be often the case, but it's definitely the case for me. It felt like, well, how much am I really going to change? Like, it's probably pretty close.
Right.
It's probably pretty close to there. And so one of my very best friends since I was little, Zach Wagman, is an editor, not for YA, but he's worked in publishing since we got out of college. And he does all kinds of books for adults, generally like literary thrillers. But so that was part of what gave me confidence to write it, because he was like, I'll read it and I'll give you notes and like, I might be able to refer you to an agent, which is what ended up happening. So that was all very fortunate. But when he read the first draft, we talked about it, he gave me some thoughts, and then I was like, okay. And like I did a second draft and I gave him that, and he like read that. He was like, it wasn't very different. I was like, no, I kind of a couple thousand words. Like, and it's like, no, let me explain to you what rewriting is, and not in an annoying way, but it's like, that was something I had to learn, what rewriting a book even is, but it's such a large piece of work when you make a novel, and that to even understand what that looks like. And obviously like 10 years into doing this, I have a much better sense. It's still very hard. But so with that book, I had that long draft. He was like, that you didn't change much. And at that point, I think I then kind of outlined what I had, and put that into index cards. So then I could look at the story and be like, where is this redundant? Where can I make changes? How is pacing and things like that? Which that's something I've done. I think more than anything, that's been kind of like a format for my books where like I might write more in a seat of the pants kind of way, and then outline going into another draft to really see like, what do I have here? What are the raw materials I've created, and how do I make that a better book? Like, what are the themes I'm seeing? Where are they dropping off? Like, what are the arcs? So
that's so interesting,
isn't it? Yeah.
And outline basically halfway through the process, or like maybe a fourth of the way through the process.
Yeah. Like thinking of the first draft is when you just let your brain go and
brain dump
the content, brain dump, and then then you're assessing, what do I have, taking inventory. And like, I find like putting a scene or like a chapter on an index card and then just like putting it all out on the floor in front of me can be helpful. And you literally like following the story, like, oh, that's weird. Like, why does she go there again? Shouldn't she just go there? And then you kind of spot things. But then when it comes with the co-writing projects, there's I can't see to the pants it because I'm planning it.
Yeah.
We're planning it together, writing it together. So on those projects, I really had to outline much more detail than I ever had. And in doing that, I was like, oh, this is kind of helpful. Yeah. So then I've
Hold on a second.
Yeah, wait a second. But it's a pendulum, because like then I'll be like, I'm going to outline this book, and then I kind of lose some of that, it's lose some of that seat of the pants spontaneity, and I find myself like, this is, so it's every book is different. It's like always kind of figuring out what do I need right now, like what's going to help me move forward. And I'm always stuck in different ways, so it's the solutions vary. But
I love that process. I think that's so interesting. And to do the brain dump first, then outline, and then like sort of tighten it up after that. That seems like that's so efficient.
I'm glad it sounds that way. It's not. It's not always. And I talk to other authors like I have to outline. Like I would lose my mind and like waste so much time if I didn't outline. And I understand that. Eric, what is your chaotic mapping like? Yeah,
I definitely waste a lot of time, but
well, who's to say what's wasted time in creativity? That's the thing. It's
right. That's what I'm thinking. I feel like doing that like brain dump first, like even Eric's method of chaos, you get like so much more creativity on the page that way, I would imagine, versus outlining first.
Right. Maybe.
I will say the drafts I write and the books that are published are usually completely rewritten. Like I always have a document of stuff I delete from drafts just in case I need it again.
It feels scary.
And usually, by the end of the final like editing process, the deleted drafts are usually around 100,000 words. So it's like longer than the book usually.
Yeah.
When my editors give me a note, I will be like, okay, so I will change this, which then I will also change the entire rest of the book. And I'm not sure if it pisses them off or if they kind of like it because they aren't reading the same book over and over. But like my editor has told me, she's like, you edit like deeply when you go. And I'm like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because I think it can only be good. Hopefully. But even what you said about like losing the spontaneity, that's what keeps me writing, because if I write an outline and I start writing the book, I'm like, well, I already know what's going to happen. This is boring. I don't get any of that feedback in my head where I'm like, ooh, this is exciting. Ooh, what if this happened?
Yes.
And so recently what I've been trying to do is outline it for sending to my editor for them to approve me writing this book, and then try and stick to the outline for the first draft and just kind of struggle through. And then afterwards, when they give me a note, I will try and, instead of like, whenever I have like a call with my editor, I'll write an entire document of what ifs, and I'll just start bringing things up and being like, what do you think if I did this instead? And that has kind of gotten me excited about the draft because there's no answer.
Yeah.
So like her answer is going to be, oh, I think that could be cool. And I'm like, yeah, me too. Yeah. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
I did that with this thriller I'm writing now. And even I sent half of the draft back a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
And even my agent responded and he was like, these are big changes. How are you feeling about this? And I'm like, I'm kind of excited. He's like, it's not something I would have thought of, but it's really interesting. I'm excited to see what happens with this. And I was like, yeah, cool. Me too. And so now I'm like writing these new scenes, and hopefully my editor's like, no, this doesn't work. You have to go back. Because now I'm like, oh, I kind of like this idea.
Right. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
I
love hearing the process of how everyone writes, because I'm not a writer. And so, but I'm a consumer. And so knowing how the sausage is made has been a really interesting part of the process for me to learn. But I'm actually even curious too about, speaking of knowing how the sausage is made, we were talking recently about the marketing of books and like what that whole process is like. And you had briefly mentioned how you kind of like wish that Monster Club was a little bit marketed a little bit more. Yeah. But has there been, I assume there has been, a clear difference between the books that you've done where you've collabed with these like huge names versus like the ones that you're writing on your own?
Yes. Marketing wise?
Mm-hmm.
You mean? Yeah. Well, with the Rhett and Link book, I feel like that book is a New York Times bestseller, but they've got this massive fan base, and it was the kind of thing where I think they hoped it would be the kind of book that would stay on the bestseller, and it was a bestseller the first week, which is still amazing, like fantastic. Like I'd never experienced anything like that. I was like, this is awesome. But I think the book is sold really well, but I think they were imagining it could. I don't know what they were imagining. Like their sights might have been set on something higher, and I think the publicity for that, like they went on Jimmy Fallon, but that's because they have a connection with Jimmy Fallon already. Like it seemed to me like a lot of the stuff that happened, it's hard to know, and I wasn't on the inside of that, like the marketing decisions or like being on the publicity meetings or whatever. But it's hard to know what was the book and what was their already built-in fame. And I feel like that's kind of what happened with the Monster Club books. Was I feel like the publisher's a little like thinking like, well, this is a famous director and like he's going to have a built-in fan base, and he's kind of thinking like, well, this is like HarperCollins and they're going to like market this and somehow like things, wires, balls get dropped. And, that's my take on it. But yeah, my books have been good. It's like that thing of like not knowing, hearing from other authors what their experience is, but not knowing like what to compare it to. And I've never hired a separate publicist. I know some authors have, and that can be helpful or not helpful, or they feel like I just spent thousands of dollars. I don't know what it did. Like there's like with anything, there's no set path to like for things to align to like make your book, a hit, so to speak. But definitely the most marketing I got was my first book, Denton Little's Death Date. There was like a lot of energy put behind it, and that was exciting. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm articulating that I this is a big question mark for me. And like going into my middle grade book coming out in August, I'm like, what can I do to like set this up the best way possible? And, I love when authors like reach out directly to all these indies, like maybe there's some indie bookstores. Like with anything, again, talking about art meeting commercial, there's so much of this is out of your control. Yeah. And as an author, it's like, what you're trying to figure out what is in my control? Like, where have I fallen short in places, or like, should I build up my social media presence more? Like I've kind of let go of that. Like I just started, I'm going to promote my Substack newsletter called Slow Dopamine, because I started writing that in April, and that's been really nice. Because I feel like, okay, at least people who like my books, they can find me here. I'm trying to write this thing once a week, just write a little something. Some of it's about books, writing process. Some of it's about, because I think about this tech stuff a lot. So some of it's like mindful tech use. How do we live in this like world where like tech is suffocating us? But that it can also be genuinely helpful. And how do we figure that out? So I'm writing things on that Substack in the hopes of like, this fulfills me. This is like creatively fulfilling. And I think that's part of the secret with like, finding your presence on social media as an author is like, what's fun for you to do? Because if you're just like, I just gotta post, it's like quickly becomes like this, what am I doing this for? Is this even helping? Yeah. So in asking this question about marketing, you inadvertently tapped a vein where I'm just like, I don't know. Let's figure this out together.
That's how everybody feels. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is the club.
The marketing world for the book, for books and for authors, it seems to be, unanimously, obviously everyone's least favorite part. Yeah. But it's interesting because it's so, because it ends up when you're already, the actual product itself feels like it's competing with how techy our world is. Right. And then actually doing the marketing for something like that and feeling like, well, do I have to use the stupid tech that's wrecking my actual product?
Right. Like, totally. Very well.
And it's hard. And Eric has actually had some really fun TikToks that have taken off, which I think is really cool. Ooh. You've done a good job, Eric, of getting your stuff out there on TikTok.
Oh, yeah. Talk about that.
The thing is, as soon as you do it, then your publisher expects you to keep doing it. Which is like, when I make videos that my publisher asks me to make, and it's usually my UK publisher will ask me to do it. Okay. It's like, they're like, oh, we only need a minute, and here's the kind of idea of what you can do. We trust you to do whatever you want. Good luck. And they're like, it's due in 3 weeks. I spent 3 weeks procrastinating, and then the day before, I'm just like, I just need to fucking film this. Right. Okay. Right. Hi. And then it came out. I just don't look forward to it. And I hate it. It puts me in this headspace where I don't think, especially because I'm sending it to a publisher. I feel like I can't be ridiculous. Like that's what they're looking for probably, but this is like a professional thing. So I'm like, okay, well, I can't be silly and joke. Like I can within reason, but it's like, here's that. They're not going to think something irreverent is going to help them. They're going to be, oh, this is a little weird. Whereas if I'm just posting it myself, I can just say something insane. If nothing happens with it, fine. It's okay.
Yeah. Yes.
But
so what were your TikToks that took off? If you don't mind me asking, I'm not on TikTok regularly, so I don't know.
The biggest one is a 6-second video of me at a signing table at Barnes & Noble just showing my stack of books and a paragraph of text about what the book is about.
That's the way.
With a sound that I don't even think is probably even on TikTok anymore. It's probably muted by now. And it was just consistently posting every single day. And it happened to be in the sweet spot of when TikTok was boosting videos that were under 10 seconds and using this one specific sound. And
amazing.
It was repeating over and over because people were reading the text instead of pausing. And so TikTok went, ooh, this has a lot of views. I'm going to send this. It wasn't even a strategy. It was just, I didn't know about it at the time. I was like, why is this happening? And somebody told me afterwards. I was like, oh, okay. So I started making more of those and none of them went off. So I was like, all right, we'll have to find something new to do.
Of course. How do you catch lightning in a bottle twice?
Right.
But did you see sales bump when that was going viral? They doubled. Oh my God.
It's still only like, no, actually, I think it was actually more than doubled because I sold 550 that week, according to BookScan, which as a debut author, maybe a month into my debut release is a great bump because
that's fantastic.
The first week's sales, I sold 1,100 copies, which again, as a debut author with no platform or anything is great.
Right.
And then it immediately dropped down to, I think, like around 100. And then it kind of slowly was tapering off. And then this one took off and it went up to 550 that one day.
Wow.
And it's like, that's the only jump that I have seen from me. Yeah. Other times there have been jumps in sales when Barnes & Noble is having a sale. All That's Left in the World was part of their like 50% off YA sale. And it just kept selling out. And so for the sale was an entire month. I think it was only in stock for one day for 3 hours. And that only ended up being like 100 sales. Like I saw this little tiny dip in my BookScan sales, but it's just things like that I know this one time, one of my videos had a change. And the thing is, it then makes you chase that. It's like, oh, well, if I can do it again, I can continue this with other books. And it's not possible to make it happen. It just happens. So
it's like a slot machine.
Tried to step back.
Literally like a slot machine. Yes.
So now I only post on TikTok when I have this irreverent idea that I'm just like, ooh, this is fun. Yeah. That could be cool. And then if it's something I want to do, that way, if it gets like 100 views and that's it, I don't feel bad about it.
You had fun.
You know what? I saw someone once say on TikTok that the best part of when a TikTok that you post doesn't really get seen is that no one saw it. So who cares? Who cares? No one saw it anyway. So like, what do you have to be embarrassed? Who cares? No one saw it. You know? So you just have to keep putting yourself out there. I mean, I don't know a lot about writing the books, but I do know a lot about making the TikToks.
Yeah.
And you just never know. You never know when one's going to just take off. So you just have to keep posting stuff without really an expectation. And you just have to like, and then it makes us all feel bad because we're just contributing into this like garbage cyclone of content that's just always going. So, you know, I don't know. I don't have the answer.
It's yes, the garbage cyclone. Well said. You know, I mentioned they both died at the end earlier, and I'm friends with Adam Silvera. I'm buddies with him because both of our books debuted in 2015, and we were part of the Fearless 15ers. But it was wild to watch Book Talk like elevated. They both die at the end, and in a way that no one could ever replicate. And it's like amazing to see and watch. And that's the part of TikTok, like in this case, you created that one thing that like bumped sales, but like most of the time, it seems like nothing the author is going to do is necessarily going to create a sensation that suddenly like, you know, makes a book a bestseller, which has happened, you know, in a very tiny percentage of cases. But with that book, it looks like it's just such a surreal thing when it happens.
Yeah,
sure. Did you see any sales from that? Like, did like anybody else end up finding you from it?
Great question. I don't know. Hard to say. No like giant bumps or anything. Yeah, Adam Sweetley shouted me out in an Instagram story once. So like there's things there. I mean, and that whole thing was so funny because when I met, so Adam's 2015 book is called More Happy Than Not. It was before they both died at the end, but he was already writing that book. And so when he, unbeknownst to me, when he saw the announcement for my book, which is also about death dates, he was like, oh my God, I hate this guy. This guy's my nemesis. and which I learned when I met him, because I had no idea he had a death date book too. And he was like, yours is going to come out first, whatever, which is of course so ironic. Like his book is one of the biggest books in YA of the past 10 years, easily. And you know, when he met me, he was like, you're too nice to be my nemesis anymore. And it was great. We laughed, but like, it's just been such a funny journey. Just that we coincidentally had the same idea of death dates in very different ways, in totally different books. And his book is wonderful, but just watching, you know, like of all the books to then get this like book talk explosion. And like, I'm seeing posters in the subway. I'm like, it's just so funny. It's like such a good case study of like the same idea. Like everyone's having the same ideas, and then people create their piece of art around an idea, and then just totally different paths happen with our work. And Denton has been very successful in its way, and I'm like so proud of it, and I love it. It's nothing like that, but just to watch a book like dominate the New York Times bestseller list is a very different kind of stratospheric success.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it is interesting too, because it's like, I actually like More Happy Than Not better than They Both Die at the End, because I think I read More Happy Than Not a couple of years after it came out. And I think maybe They Both Die at the End had just come out when I read More Happy Than Not.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is really good. And I think part of it might be because it's very much, it's kind of like, if nobody listening knows about it, it's kind of like Eternal Sunshine, but this kid doesn't realize that he has wiped his memory, and people around him are kind of hiding it. And you find out he has wiped it because he is gay, and he is trying to hide those emotions. And it's like, I think maybe that was the issue, is that it speaks so much towards like closeted gay kids who might be scared how their family or friends are going to react to them coming out. And maybe that's why it hasn't like had that superstardom success. Like They Both Die at the End, which is more just about love and just finding happiness and light in your life and everything.
Yes. Living your life while you can. Yeah.
But if nobody here has listened or read More Happy Than Not, definitely take a look at that too.
Yeah.
As well as Denton Little's Death Date too. Because you also have a sequel to it, right?
I do. It's called Denton Little's Still Not Dead. Spoiler alert, built into the second book.
How did you find writing a sequel? I always like to talk to sequel writers, because it's like,
it was hard.
It's either like terrible and like just complicated, or you're sitting there trying to figure out how to live up to expectations, but also do something different. Yeah.
Complicated and at times terrible. Yeah. But ultimately, you know, got where it needed to be. But yeah, I remember, you know, turning in the initial draft of that to my editor, who had obviously seen Denton in like a much more polished state, and her being like, and maybe, I don't even know if she said this to me or just to my agent, and I like saw the email there. She's like, well, this one's definitely needs more work than the first, or something like that. And I'm like, yeah. Which I knew, but it still is like, okay, yeah.
It's also, you're writing on a deadline. Like with your first book, you have so much time to write it because you're not represented, you're not under contract. And then all of a sudden you have to write another thing. And it's like, oh, I only have 6 months to write this.
Right. Yeah. You're off to the races. And it's like, yeah. So
stress.
Yeah. So sequels, fun, can be stressful.
Are you going to go back to YA after middle grade?
I am. Thank you for asking. I'm writing something now. I'm rewriting something that's going to come out from HarperCollins in like early 2026. Yes. It's called right now, the title might change, but it's called 16 Forever. It is about the 16-year-old Carter Cohen who gets essentially stuck at age 16. It's a different kind of time loop in that as soon as he's about to turn 17, he wakes up the next morning physically 16 again, not remembering anything from the past year, while the world around him moves on. So it's not like Groundhog Day, and he doesn't remember anything, and everyone else around him does. And so, like, when the book starts to sixth loop of this, and his younger brother is at college, is older now, and yeah, so it's
that's interesting.
It's interesting, and there's so much I love mining about it, but it's been a very complicated kind of thing, and has been a rewrite where I really had to outline everything because the first draft was kind of messy, and there's just so much like time to think about, and like 6 years have passed, and I'm at a place right now where I feel pretty confident, and I'm doing this thing this is interesting to talk about as far as writing process. There's a book called Refuse to be Done by Matt Bell. Sorry, I had to look. But it's a great writing book. And he talks about when you're going from, one draft to another, and it's like a big rewrite, actually rewriting the whole book, like not just going into the first draft and making changes, but doing this thing where you start a blank document and write each sentence. And I'm doing that for the first time ever. And I'm really enjoying it. I mean, it forces you to look at every sentence. I know.
So Eric is so exasperated, just going, really?
I know.
No,
it's something about it.
You're not the first person I've heard doing this. There's authors who write their entire draft and then put it into the trash on their computer and then hit empty trash.
No, that's insane.
And
I can't grapple with that. I mean, I've got the other draft here because that sounds terrifying. But I also understand that. It's like the first draft, you go through the journey and you're kind of like, what is this? What is this? And you're like, oh, you get to the end, you're like, I think I have a better idea of what this is. Let me start again. And so this is an in-between way of doing that. But like, it forces you to just look at every sentence. And so you're writing something like, oh, this was what I wrote the first draft. This doesn't even make sense. I know so much more now. So, and it's giving me that good, like godlike feeling of the omniscient writer. It's like, oh, this doesn't make sense. Like, I know what's going to happen to the end. Like, let me set that up better. So I'm having a thrilling time doing that. I don't know how the draft will turn out. There's still like things that are complicated and confusing to me, but hopefully as I go, it's going to get clearer.
Maybe that'll be one of my experiments one day. I'll try and do it. But
when the right project seems like it demands such a thing or that it could benefit from such a thing, then do it. You'll know. Yeah. You'll know when
you'll feel it.
You'll feel it. That's right.
It's when I'm on my first draft or my fourth draft with my editor, and it still hasn't gotten better. And she's like, "Ooh, maybe we should do something else." Then I'm like, okay, I'll rewrite it.
Exactly. You're like, what if I rewrite this whole thing? It's like, that sounds cool. Yeah.
So you had a book that came out in August of this year?
No, August next year. August 2025. Yes.
Okay. Yes. What's coming out in August 2025?
Oh, yeah. I haven't even mentioned it. So this is a middle grade. It's called Zed Moonstein Makes a Friend.
That's a great name.
Thank you so much, Alyssa.
Love it.
It is about Zed Moonstein, who lives in a town that is essentially owned and run by Monolith, one of the world's largest tech companies.
Wow. Okay.
And this is a book where, I mentioned earlier, I think about tech a lot and like the way we're living our lives. So this is like putting a lot of this into like a really fun middle grade book. And this is a book that I had started writing in 2019, was writing it during lockdown. It's had a long journey, and essentially Zed Moonstein, he lives in this town. He basically gets access to this beta app called Mono Friend. That's like a best friend, AI best friend, which, he's in sixth grade. He's in middle school. He's growing apart from his best friend. So he's like, I'm going to just do this app. At first it's amazing. And then of course things go horribly awry. But when I started writing it, AI was just kind of like, is like kind of like a concept. This seemed very far future. And then suddenly ChatGPT came out in early 2023. I was like, oh shit, if I don't like finish the rewrites on this book and like sell it, this is going to be historical fiction. Like this is not, I thought this was like 5 minutes in the future. And now it's like, this exists.
Yeah.
So I suddenly felt this urgency. Like, I got to do so. So I did like a whole very deep rewrite after, that was probably draft 5 or draft 6. I was like, this is the rewrite. I can't keep like going to other projects and doing things. Like I have to do this because the window's going to close on selling this. And even it coming out in August 2025, I'm like terrified. Like, is this going to like, how is this book going to land? Is this going to, is ChatGPT 9 going to be out by then? And it just like,
Well, luckily it's middle grade, so I can't imagine they're using ChatGPT as much.
Oh, I hope not, Alyssa, but don't,
I hope not.
Who knows? Who knows?
I really hope not.
Tech education tech is like, these tendrils are climbing into all the schools. I see it. And it's like, no.
That stresses me out.
Oh,
That's
me
such a
too.
cool concept for a book, though. I love that.
Thank
I like
you.
that you're putting that energy into something, and hopefully, I don't know.
Yes, thank you.
Does it end with this with Zed wanting to read?
Yes. Well, yes, that's part of it. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I guess I just gave away the whole book. It ends. It's his journey to wanting to read.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm really happy with it. It was one of those things where at times, like the first draft even was more like preachy because like I have all these like strong feelings about tech, and my agent's like, but didn't you want it to be funny? I'm like, it is. It's like dry funny. It's dry.
You just don't get it, but it is funny.
Yeah. And then, several rewrites later, I'm like, oh yeah, no, that wasn't funny. That wasn't, certainly wasn't as funny as it could be.
Right.
So I think it's gotten to a much more funny place, and I like it. And so yeah, that comes out from Clarion Books, which is part of HarperCollins. And I say that because originally I sold it. So my editor's Jordan Brown, amazing guy, amazing editor. He was at Balzer and Bray, and Balzer and Bray is part of like everything that's happening in publishing. Balzer and Bray. Yeah, I sold.
I was Balzer and Bray.
You were okay. Yes, I saw that in your books. Yes, so Balzer and Bray obviously moved to Macmillan, but Jordan did stay at Harper, which was a relief because it's nice to, maintain the same editor if you can. But like everything was being reorganized there, and finally, it's like they figured out there's Clarion Books now, and Zed Moonstein is part of Clarion Books. Are you still with Balzer and Bray?
Yeah, I'm with whatever HarperCollins' new imprint is going to be.
Okay.
They haven't announced it yet.
Okay.
My fourth book will be coming out from them.
Amazing.
And then I think when I was talking to Elliot Schreifer last night, I think he's actually with Jordan as well. So.
Yes. Well, this is how I've met Elliot Schreifer, through Jordan.
Got it. Publishing's tiny.
Publishing is a tiny little world. And Elliot read Zed Moonstein very generously and was really into it. And so I have one blurb now, and it's from Elliot Schreifer.
That's amazing.
Which is really nice. And so I'd reach out to him. I hadn't officially met him. I'd reach out to him and be like, oh my God, thank you so much for taking the time to read this, and blah, blah, blah. And then, so that's how we became e-friends. And then I saw on Instagram, I was like, oh my God, your sequel to your book is coming out in 2 weeks, and you're doing all these events. And then I was like, and one of those events is October 1st at Books of Wonder. I think I'm going to try to go to that. And then you're like, I'm doing an event October 1st at Books of Wonder. So
that is where we are all going to meet in person.
Here we go.
That's a beautiful first full circle moment, you guys.
Beautiful. The circle, Alyssa, right?
It all comes back.
Yes.
It all comes back around.
Yes.
Lance, before we let you go,
yes.
We always ask what people are reading. So what are you reading?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking. So I just read, I've been more in the middle grade world, but I'm going to talk about YA too. My favorite YA I've read recently.
Talk up the middle grade.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to talk it all up.
They need the help.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, I love Aaron and Trotta Kelly's books, and I just read Those Kids from Fawn Creek, incredible middle grade novel. It's about this class of seventh graders in Louisiana. It's like 12 white kids, and like you start the book and you're like, I'm not going to be able to tell any of these kids apart. And then like through the book, you get to know each and every one of them. This new kid joins their class and like shakes things up. It's beautiful. It's really amazing. Another amazing middle grade book I just read is Eventown by Corey Ann Haydu. That's from 2019. So I'm usually like late to the party with books. But Eventown is amazing. Like I read Those Kids from Fawn Creek and then Eventown, and they were both so good that I was like, those books that makes you inspired to like write better things and also feel like, should I be writing books? Like these are very good. And Eventown is about these two twin sisters. One of them is the narrator, Elodie. They move to this new town, basically where everything like seems perfect. And it's like, everyone's always in a good mood and it doesn't rain there. And it's like, of course, as the book progresses, you realize like, that's not all it's cracked up to be, but it's written with such a sophisticated emotional intelligence, especially for 8 to 12-year-olds, like it's going to hit their frequency, but it's just so smart. I was very impressed by it. A YA novel that I read and was just bowled over by is My Eyes Are Up Here by Laura Zimmerman. Have either of you read that?
I have not, no.
Okay.
I've heard of it.
It's so good. It's about this. I mean, to describe it, I have to say, like, it's My Eyes Are Up Here because this girl has like big breasts, and that comes to like define her identity more than she obviously wants it to. And like, that's, and it's so smart and so funny. And it's like, yeah, I was just so surprised and delighted by it. And also very moved throughout. So put that one on your radar. She also has another book that came out called Just Do This One Thing for Me that's on my shelf that I have not yet read. But I hear amazing things about that one. That's more of a mystery.
Ooh.
So yeah, those are 3 books. I'm also reading a book. Oh, I keep looking for these books to like hold them up, but they're not all around me. But I'm reading a book by Cal Newport so Cal Newport wrote the book Deep Work, and he like talks about deep work. And that's something like, if you don't know about it, basically it's like working without distractions. So you can like really get in the groove, get in the flow state. And, I love that book. And he has a book called Slow Productivity. It's kind of like a lot of the same concepts, but I'm into reading books about that. Less about like, how do I be as productive as possible, but more like, how do I schedule a day and like, so where it's like not just always broken up, tabbing over here, answering this email, like finding ways to really like get in the flow and like feel good about the work I'm doing. Regardless of how much output there is, but just like, I did it. Like I focused and I sat down and I really worked. And so
I want to read
feel like
that.
that's especially good for writers because there are times when you can't write. Like the words just aren't coming. And then like after 2 days of that, you write 320 words one day. You're like, thank God, I'm back. Yes.
I used to clock my writing days via word count, like this word count. And then, but I much prefer now to be like, did I sit down and do it? And I have the app called Freedom where you can like set amount of time and it cuts everything off. And so it's like, did I do like 3 Freedom sprints of 45 minutes each? And, you know, cause that can be do it, Eric, do it. I mean, whether you're getting stuff down or not, you're like, I did the sprint. I sat there. I felt uncomfortable. I felt bad about myself, but like I sat there.
I'm going to do that today.
Do it.
Wait,
do it.
What is this Freedom app?
Freedom app, Alyssa. It's amazing.
Here, I'm just going to turn it on right now.
Oh, hey. No.
I'm just kidding.
The podcast is over.
It's screen time.
Yeah, it has a lot of things. What I mainly use it for is just on my laptop because you can use it on your phone too. Mm-hmm. But you just set a timer and it's like, and you can even pick which apps you have access to, but I just shut it all down. Mm-hmm. And then when you're like writing and you're like, I need to look up the details of what a Chili's would look like for this scene. And then you go to check your internet. You're like, oh shoot, I don't know why. And it's like, did I really need to do that? No, I'm just trying to run from the writing.
Right. Ooh, that sounds very helpful.
It's huge. I've been using that for years now. And,
I've had it for years now.
Well, it's
been installed.
No, it's always the moment.
I'll get a little pop down saying, oh, you need to update this. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead, update.
You're like, okay, great. I've done my due diligence. Now it's updated.
Should I need it? No, just update.
Yeah. No, the moment of turning on the Freedom, that's always like, I'm always like, shouldn't I check something else? Like, let me go back on Instagram.
Right.
That feeling we all have where it's like, I don't want to do my work. I just want to get the small satisfaction of some stupid thing like an article about a new movie coming out or something. Anyway.
It's
Freedom.
So funny.
I'm going to do it today and see how it works for me.
Please report back to me when I see you at the Books of Wonder event.
On October 1st.
On October 1st with Elliot Schreifer. Well, it's so nice.
This was awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so much for chatting.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I'll also mention my most recent YA novel is Crying Laughing because I realized we didn't talk about that. It's about a girl who does improv.
Okay.
We've been talking for an hour and I totally forgot to even ask about it. I have it on my notes too. I was like,
It's because we've been having such a good time. That's great.
Know.
Yes, it is.
We're just going with the
flow. Everyone needs to check out.
When we have you back on, and I know that 2026 is far away, but we're still going to talk about it then.
In publishing time, that's like a blink, right?
Yeah, right?
Exactly.
Amazing.
Well, thank you so much, Lance.
When she asks me how far we can take it, I tell her we can take it across the entire universe.
one of our greatest episodes ever, even though I say that about every episode.
That was one of my favorite conversations that we had, for sure.
It was very, very easy talking. I feel like everybody that we've lucked out, every single guest so far, I'm knocking on wood, has been like really easy to have conversations with. Like, it just seems like we're just all friends talking.
I know.
Call.
I think it's because if you are an author, you already are kind of predisposed to being real good with your words.
No, that's not true.
So people, or we just attract the yappers. What are you gonna do?
That's it.
Gal's got a yap.
So Alyssa, what are you reading?
What am I reading? Oh, so it's September now, and so I need to start finding books that are
spooky books.
Mm-hmm. So I've had this book called Slewfoot for like a year, and I haven't read it yet. And so I have the audiobook that I'm been listening to, but I honestly it's been a really busy past few months, so I haven't been actually reading a physical book. And it pains me. It makes me sad because I miss the feeling of just like losing hours in a book. So I need to find a kind of fall ebook to read.
I'm like trying to think. I mean, my mind, you should read Dark Harvest.
Oh.
It is. It's an older book. Also YA.
Okay.
And it is by Norman Partridge.
Okay.
It's from 2006, but it was made into a movie that came out last year. And I will say the book is great. The movie is really, really good.
So should I read the book or watch the movie?
Read the book because it's a short book. It's like 175 pages. Oh. It's like quick.
Oh my God. Like, and it's with Kindle Unlimited. It's already on my Kindle.
Perfect. So read that and then go watch the movie because it's the kind of thing where the book is great and then the movie is its own great thing too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that.
It's just because I think the director of it is also like the director of his name is David Slade. He does like a lot of like thrillers. He did the Twilight movie Eclipse, which I think is the best Twilight movie. He did 30 Days of Night. He did episodes of Hannibal, which is such a great show.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's what get your spooky season started. Read Dark Harvest and then watch the movie. Let me know what you think.
Okay, I will. I'm excited.
I am reading it's the sequel to The Darkness Outside Us. It's called The Brightness Between Us by Elliot Schreifer because I am doing the event on October 1st, which we're all going to go to.
Yeah.
So I have to read it really quick.
Yeah. So. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you don't have a lot of time. Okay. Well, I'm so excited to hear you talk about that and get to actually hang out with you. And everyone make sure you follow YAOK Podcast on Instagram. Yes. And we will
let us know what you're reading.
Yeah, let us know what you're reading, and we will see you on the next one.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.